Okay, well, we're live, and just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us this evening as we look at mental health and well-being during COVID-19. If you don't know me, my name's Donovan, one of the pastors at Common Ground Constantiaberg, and it's just so great to be with you tonight. Before I introduce the other guests, I thought it would be great for me just to give you a little outline for the evening. As pastors, we get to chat to a lot of people, and as I've been chatting and connecting and having conversations, just realized how much strain people are taking mentally, and how much struggle we're seeing in the kind of health of our mental states. But not only the conversations I've been having with others, just my own life that I've been living, my own experiences, the experiences I'm having with my kids, has also helped me to just realize that actually there's a lot more going on here than maybe I'm fully aware of. So we wanted to open up a conversation about mental health and well-being. Maybe as you watch, you're able to kind of make sense of a bit of your own world, locate yourself in this whole process. Maybe it'll be good for you to know that you're not alone in some of the experiences and emotions, thoughts that you're having. I just wanted to say quickly that tonight isn't focused on anxiety and depression per se. I mean, it's sure to come up as part of the conversation, but we thought it would be a good idea just to speak generally about mental health and well-being during this COVID-19 time. I mean, we've all experienced a lot of catalysts that have kind of challenged our mental well-being. I think of just the experience of loss. I think of just the sudden and quick change and transition. I think of the very real uncertainty of the future. And these are all kind of factors that are impacting our lives. And of course, we're aware that so many of you have different circumstances, different experiences, but we're trusting tonight, as pastors, as health professionals, our hope tonight is just to help people and to serve you. And I trust tonight's going to do just that. So we're going to be chatting for 30 minutes about mental health and well-being for adults. After that, we'll speak for 30 minutes on mental health and well-being for our kids. We are going to record these sessions, so they will be available for you later. So if you're watching later, good to be with you. Okay, enough from me. Let's do some introductions. Yolande, let's start with you, and then Laura, and then Luke.
Okay, so I'm Yolande Offord. I'm a clinical psychologist that practice mostly in southern suburbs. I work mostly with adults, so that's to me this part of the evening. And yes, I see a lot of people with depression and anxiety because those are the mental health illnesses that most people experience, but I also work with quite severe mental health challenges. So people that really struggle with either more than one diagnosis, more than one mental health diagnosis, or that experience severe symptoms, including people who sometimes experience psychosis as a result of their mental health difficulties. So that's me.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Laura Fisher. I'm a research psychologist and an academic strategist, and I work at the South African College of Applied Psychology. So I come at mental health from a slightly different angle. I've spent one of the last 17 years working in higher education, focusing on training mental health practitioners and training people for community-based counselling. And I'm a really passionate advocate for the provision of accessible mental health care services for all people, for all South Africans. So I'm delighted for all of you being here tonight, because this is one of the ways we're able to provide a mental health service. I am all about mental health promotion, and I'm delighted to be with you tonight. I am also the mum of 3 boys, 11, 10 and 9. So COVID-19 has left me with skinned elbows, bruised knees, a tired body and a humble heart. And that's really me that joins you in this conversation tonight.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic, Lord. I appreciate your honesty. I can relate. I feel a little bit like, why am I on the screen with all of these big guns? But in all honesty, I'm a pastor from Fishhook. My name's Luke, and I'm married, and we got 3 small kids as well. 10, 8, and 5. I think they change quite regularly, and I have one wrong there. Just a human being as well, going through so much of what we're experiencing for myself, for my family, but also reading this moment for us that there's some stuff going on that we need help with. We're a little bit out of our depth here. And I'm so excited to be able to chat with you guys around some of the things we ourselves are experiencing and so many we know. And so thanks, Donnie, for this opportunity.
Well, brilliant, guys. So the format for tonight is we're going to look at 3 key questions that are going to guide the conversation. And then, of course, we want to interact with you. We've got about 100, just under 140 guys watching right now. And what we're going to do is you're free to ask questions via the comment section on Facebook. You can see my phone number on the screen. You're free to WhatsApp me if you want to ask a question directly, and I'll channel that through for you. So let's get starting right away. We've only got 30 minutes. So the first question I wanted to ask us is, what can we expect to be experiencing in a time like this when it comes to mental health and well-being? Maybe Yolande, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I think, Don, in the beginning, you spoke about some of the challenges that we are facing at the moment. So, for example, people are experiencing loss, and it's various types of losses. So it's not necessarily loss of life, but it's, loss of life as we knew it, sort of, the type of life that we were comfortable with, even though that life might have been hard, but we sort of had our rhythm in that life. It might have been loss of freedoms, so with the lockdown, we've experienced a lot of that, loss of coping mechanisms, or access to coping mechanisms that comes with the loss of freedom. So whether those were healthy, like exercise, or unhealthy, like drinking, people have lost that. And also some people have lost income, they've lost their livelihoods, and that's also, and then there are people who might be experiencing loss of loved ones as well during this time. So there's that aspect. When it comes to loss, we can expect to go through a grieving process, and therefore sort of the type of emotions that we might see happening is things like sadness. People will also go through the stages of grief, and therefore people can also experience an emotion like anger. But other things that we see in the stages of grief are things like denial, like this is not really happening, the virus isn't that bad, it won't happen to me, I won't get it. The anger, and we can definitely see the anger coming out with lockdown, so angry that we can't do what we want to do. There's bargaining, like, okay, it's fine if I just put my head down for the next month and socially distance, then everything will be okay. We get the sadness, which a lot of us experience. And I just wanted to say what Luke said. I'm also a human being. I also go through all these things myself, and various stages. And then we will finally get to the acceptance stage. And acceptance just means we face our reality and really say, okay, this is what it is. And what do I do now? We can also, and I also want to talk about the fact that because we're experiencing the multiplicity of losses, so not just loss in one area of our life, therefore we might experience more intense emotions than what we used to experience on a day-to-day basis. But also it's not just that we're experiencing loss, we're experiencing we're facing something that we've never had to face before, and therefore we haven't necessarily developed ways in which to cope with it. And we're also facing a lot of uncertainty because we don't know what life is going to look like in a couple of months' time. And part of the uncertainty is we don't know what life is going to look like next week, because as lockdown levels change, life changes. And, we might feel like, okay, I've just gotten used to this thing now, and then there's another change. And now you have to sort of get used to this new thing, and then there's another change, you know. So all that uncertainty also brings up fear and anxiety. And I just want to sort of say with emotions, we need to understand emotions aren't good or bad. They're just emotions. Some of them are pleasant, like joy, and some of them are very unpleasant to experience, like anxiety. And that we shouldn't see experiencing emotions or experiencing intense emotions as the enemy. The emotions is just trying to say something to us. It's just trying to send us a message. And that message in this time is like, you're experiencing loss, there's a change in your life, you know, there's uncertainty, so you need to pay attention, and you need to think of, you know, so it's just trying to get your attention and to say something is going on, and now you need to think of what do I do with this something that's going on.
That's brilliant, Yolande. And I mean, Celeste just reminded us on Facebook that it's also the loss of social connectivity, and just the importance of that social contact. Laura, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to agree with everything Yolande said, but also just from my own kind of experience of COVID-19, I think that we are on a certain trajectory in our lives, and we feel that we have a sense of continuity and coherence and predictability to our lives. And then this thing has arrived and kind of disorganized our lives and disorganized our story, and given us a great sense of uncertainty, I think, about the future, and also robbed us, I think, of some things that are absolutely critical to our well-being. We're neurobiologically hardwired to be in connection with people. And so just to agree with what Celeste said, for me, the sadness of it all has been a loss of connection and physicality and sitting next to someone in community, and even a loss of compassion. You can't read a person's face, you can only see their eyes, so you don't really know what they're saying to you. So I think that these things are normal, and we're together in this. We're charting uncharted waters together.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I mean, we're talking about mental well-being, but even, you know, physically, like Heidi and I have experienced like a strange tiredness. You know, even though we feel like we should have maybe in lockdown had more energy, you know, more space, more alone, but actually we feel like it's been different, and that both physical fatigue and that mental fatigue that comes with this, the impact of Zoom, and yeah, it's just been a very kind of surprising, and I guess there's just an unraveling of maybe things that have been just under the surface, you know?
Yeah.
Sure.
No, I think that so many people have said to me that they absolutely hate looking on Facebook at how everyone's taken up these amazing hobbies and been on like a 6-week let's get ripped kind of thing, and you know, doing things they haven't had time to do before, and taking snapshot pictures of being the perfect mum who crafts with their kids in the morning, and I mean, I think that the reality is that although a lot of us want to be very proactive, a loss of continuity and coherence in our stories leaves us feeling quite overwhelmed and de-energized. So at a time when we'd expect that we should have more energy, we often don't. And again, we're together in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Donna, I wanted to say, like, it's important to understand that it is normal. But, you know, so I think some people might think, like, become concerned because of all these emotions that they're suddenly experiencing, or the intensity of the emotions. But like Laura said, it's actually what we're experiencing is actually normal, considering what we're going through. And I would just like to sort of say, to point out, how do we know that it's not normal? Like, when should we become concerned, or when should we reach out for help from a professional? And there's 2 quite simple ways in which we can look at ourselves and sort of figure out whether I need help or not. And it's based on distress and impairment. And what I mean with distress is that if you feel so overwhelmed by this emotion that you can't access other more pleasant emotions, then we know something is causing you distress. So yes, most of us are feeling a lot of anxiety maybe at times, but we might also be able to phone a friend and then feel a little bit better, or have a cup of tea sitting outside. I sit on my son's jungle gym often and just look at life in the street, like if there's a car coming past every now and again. And, you know, and that helps. But if those things are not helping anymore, then that's sort of a time to reach out. And what I mean with impairment is when your emotions are starting to impair your functioning, your day-to-day functioning, like you can't actually work anymore, can't get out of bed, you're not looking after yourself anymore. And yes, most of us, like we had a little chat earlier, you know, nobody would know if you're not wearing deodorant for the day. That's sort of not what I mean. It's if you're really getting to a point where it's now been a couple of days and you haven't had a shower, and where, you know, you're completely withdrawn, you don't even want to reach out to anyone via WhatsApp. I think that's sort of when the warning lights are actually going off. Yeah,
that's so helpful. Luke, are you wanting to ask anything? Can I carry on? So it's fantastic. We've kind of described what we should be experiencing. I think social media is not helping. You know, you got FOMO, fear of missing out. You only live once. Everyone posting the very best of everything, and you know, it's all that comparison, and all these things kind of are undermining our own mental well-being. So let's talk a little bit about that. So the second question we wanted to talk about is what can we do to support ourselves? So, you know, we're struggling with a bit of mental health and well-being. So how do we combat that? How do we forge greater health? Maybe, like, you know, what are some of the good habits? You spoke about phoning a friend, having a cup of tea. You know, those are kind of positive. You could also get negative habits we're picking up that are actually undermining our well-being, whether we know it or not. Any advice you've got for us guys on just how we cope and actually better our mental health? Laura, why don't you go?
Yeah. I was going to suggest that Yolande kicks us off on that one.
Go for it. Go for it, Yolande.
Okay. So there's an article that I often send to my clients, and it was and it's very short, and it was written by Dr. Henry Cloud, who's the author of the Boundaries books. And he mentioned 4 things in the article, and I found those 4 things extremely helpful. And the first thing he talks about is connection. We need to make time to still connect to people. And yes, a lot of people say, okay, we've had enough of Zoom at the end of the day. We don't want to do another Zoom. You can still call people. But you know what we have found in our family quite helpful is we've actually started establishing a relationship with our neighbors. For 2 years, we've been saying we need to get together, we need to do something. We just never got to it. Now, every Friday night, we sit in our driveways and we have a conversation, you know, from the one driveway to the next. And we connect more with our neighbors in our neighborhood as well when we go on morning walks and greeting people. And those are ways in which we can feel less distant from people and still have face-to-face connection. So the connection is the first point. The second point is structure. We still need to have a routine. So, you know, to have like a daily time when you get up, then maybe do exercise, have your breakfast, whatever your routine is, that we still need to have some structure to our day. You know, so initially there was a big disruption in that structure or routine we had in our day. And I think a lot of us are finding now that we sort of, and me personally, I'm finding that I'm falling into sort of a new rhythm. It's not necessarily easy, and I do miss things that I used to do, but the new rhythm or structure that I have is really helping. The third thing is control. Focus on the things that you can control. You can control, for example, the precautions you take, washing your hands, wearing your mask. Those are things we can control in this time. We have control over what we spend our time and energy on as well. And that brings me sort of to the fourth point, which is setting limits. So that's, Don, what you said, like the healthy versus the unhealthy things. We need to still set limits with ourselves. We need to still say, I can't just eat junk food the whole day. I can't just eat biscuits and chocolates because I'm feeling blur, like just put that in my body. I can still set limits with what I eat. I can still set limits with how much time I spend on media, what I read. I have a friend who said she chose 2 websites where she's going to get her information from, and that's it. And that's her way of limiting. Limiting, also binge watching series and those things. And sleep, make sure you get enough sleep. Nutrition, eating healthy, getting exercise. Like at this time, those really basic, simple things actually help us.
I just wanted to read a question. Yolande, maybe, or either of you can jump in. Francis, she wrote, I feel like we're just surviving on autopilot. So we get up, we get dressed, we start homework, we start our chores, but there's very little room left for choice. So we're kind of trapped in this lack of freedom. And, we have to do what we have to do, but there's no joy in that repetitiveness and loneliness. So, a lot of people are kind of in that cycle. How, can you speak to that a little bit?
I'd love to, because I have been thinking a lot about kind of my own feelings, but also a lot about what a lot of our students are experiencing, my friends, family, and it's questions around a sense of there being something absent. So in the example that's just been given, there's like an absence of joy, or there's an absence of enjoyment to life. I also know that a lot of people are experiencing an absence of community, an absence of, well, where's my family? Who is my tribe? An absence of, well, where's God in all of this? And I think that what I've really been struck by is the need to recognize presence and to actually be present. So yes, we can wake up in the morning and we can go onto autopilot, or we can recognize that when we wake up in the morning, there's like a teeny tiny little window where we can make one small adjustment that sets us off on a different track. And for me, and I know the research just shows the importance of just recognizing that there is beauty in the small things, the very small things, and attending to presence and finding peace and beauty in the small details. And I think that that's one way to really get off autopilot. So my boys have an autopilot default way of relating to each other that's often very aggressive, and they're pushing each other around, and they're dissing each other, and it's not always that healthy. And then they'll come to me and they say, oh, Daniel's being mean to me, or Ethan's being mean to me. And I'll just say to them, you don't have to change everything about your relationship. Just do one thing differently, because it offsets that sense of being on autopilot. And so that would be my encouragement. And that's how I would say we as a family have survived, is really noticing presence rather than absent. Being present to the moment, even to your own breath. Breath is wonder. And just taking a moment to say, I breathe, and breath is wonder, can change that sense of going on to autopilot. So I'm a little less conventional in terms of all the routines. I think routine is good, but I also I think that we cannot lose our sense of spontaneity in all of this. So have breakfast on the roof if your children are old enough.
Yeah, I'm going to hand over to Luke in just a moment, because I know he's possibly got some thoughts. I loved Yolande's things also about connection, structure, control, setting limits. But, you know, I love what you're saying, Laura, because it's like, you know, I think, you know, putting my kids to bed more than ever before, it can become routine, but there's also that moment where you can, you know, really chat to them, pray with them, kind of look at them, see them, kind of treasure that moment. And it does change my state of mind. I mean, it does change my sense of purpose, you know, that I'm parenting, that I'm guiding, that I'm partnering, I'm sharing my life. So that's really helpful. And of course, mindfulness is a huge thing. But Luke, Heather Phillips commented a little bit about being careful what you read. You know, so much negativity, news. And I know you've got some thoughts around that stuff. Why don't you share with us? Just go for it.
Yeah, just to, I mean, if I could take a stab at pulling together some of those threads from Laura and Yolande and how that's working out in my life. One of the things is setting in place, as you said, good limits. I mean, our media is designed, you just think about it in the simplest way. We don't pay often for our news. Our news, they make money from advertising, and the way that they do that is by locking. You know, you've got to be kept in, and the more you're kept in is by reading stuff that often triggers anger, often triggers anxiety, and that sucks you in further. Yeah, and so actually just by putting that stuff on a leash and just saying, no, I'll be discerning with what I read, you know. And Yolande also spoke about limits in terms of screens and escapist behavior. I think, Donnie, you were so good in speaking to me about in these moments of crisis, we tend towards the stuff that's often the easiest way. What was your language there, Donnie?
I said, you know, we can deal with the nearest threat, you know, as quickly as we can, and we don't really think about, you know, the long-term impact of those habits we're picking up.
Absolutely, you know, so just being mindful of our tendency to kind of find the easiest way out of that thing, rather than actually being more thoughtful in that. And so I think for me, I initially started asking the question, how do I go back to normal as quick as possible? And I've now started to ask the question, how do I cooperate with what God might be doing in me during this season, so that on the other side of this, whatever it looks like, whenever it actually gets there, I can put in place things in my life now that help me emerge as a better human being. And so that's those 4 things you spoke through there. You spoke of connection, structure, control, and setting limits, Yolande. That's all of life, you know. And I'm choosing to embrace some of those things in my weekly and daily routines, and it's been helpful.
Luke, I just want to say, you also mentioned something that I sort of touched on earlier, but that's the acceptance point. Yeah, and acceptance is that thing where you get to that point where you realize, well, this is what my life is at this moment. It doesn't mean you agree with what your life is like and you like it. It just means you realize this is just what it is for this moment. So in this moment that I'm here, yes, what can God do in my life? And what can I learn, and what can I do, and how can I move forward from this point? And it also ties in with what Lauren said on the being present. It's only when we're present and also Luke, you also mentioned it, when, you know, not escaping. When we're not trying to escape and we're present and we say, okay, but this is actually what I'm experiencing. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm feeling at this moment, that we can actually live life fully and then not be on autopilot anymore. I think we need to remember that life is hard regardless, and that we're going to experience a variety of emotions, but we do need to, but it's only when we are present and really like present in the moment, regardless of whether that's a pleasant moment or an unpleasant moment. But the more present we are, the more likely we are to notice moments of joy, moments of excitement, moments of contentment. So we are also then more likely to notice the pleasant emotional experiences as well.
Great. Guys, I realize it's been half an hour, but if it's okay with you guys, we're going to push on for another 10 minutes. I just think there's a little bit more for us to say. I hope you guys can do that. If you desperately need to dial out, we will excuse you. And for those of you that are listening in, don't forget you can ask questions on the comment section. My phone number is on the screen. Send me a WhatsApp and I'll represent that for you. So guys, you know, we're all speaking about these positive habits we can put in place. So, you know, people have lost coping mechanisms and are needing to kind of replace those. What would you consider to be a helpful habit or a helpful adapting, and maybe some less helpful habits? I mean, how do we know, you know, where this is going to take us? I mean, have you got any wisdom around that? Is that a bit abstract, or does it make sense? I'm guessing it's abstract by the lack of response.
No.
You can see anything as abstract or concrete. Depends on your outlook.
Okay.
I'll start with the abstract maybe. I know one of the really positive coping mechanisms that we can adopt is by not being overcome by fear. I think because of the uncertainty that we're surrounded by constantly, we could potentially be quite overcome by fear. And how do we overcome fear? Well, the Bible tells us that the truth sets us free. And then I ask myself the question, well, what is the truth? And for me, the truth is my story. It's your story. And the story that we tell each other, and the importance of telling our stories to each other, really is a very, very healthy coping mechanism. So in our family, we say story is our survival and truth is our song. And we listen to each other's stories. And maybe you're on your own and you don't have someone to tell your story to. But I would still encourage you to recognize that story is your survival and truth is your song, because you can tell your story by journaling. You can tell your story by writing letters. You can paint. You can play music. All of these things are ways of expressing out of what's inside our story, and in doing that we validate our own experiences and we recognize that this truth, this is what I'm living. It might not feel good, in fact it feels terrible often, but it's still my truth and it's my story, and in telling my story I'm able to reframe maybe the way I see things. So yeah, that's would be kind of one of the encouragements I would give.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I think, go for it, Yolande. Yeah.
No, I remember, you know, when Lauren shared this, or when I heard it from her the first time, and I really loved that way of framing coping mechanisms, or a way of coping. And I think it's, in terms of what's healthy and unhealthy, there isn't necessarily a specific answer. You know, obviously things that is unhealthy, but it's more to think of when you're using something to escape, then we can start thinking of it as unhealthy. So whatever that is, you know, so even something like exercise can be an unhealthy coping mechanism if you're using it to escape life, and if you're using it to avoid feeling what you're feeling. You know, so if it doesn't energize you, if you don't use that time maybe to work through things, or feel an emotion while you're running or cycling or surfing or whatever it is, if it is to escape your own life or to escape your own reality, then it's not necessarily a healthy coping mechanism, because then you're not dealing with the reality. So for example, sorry, my mind's just going to a very random example, but if you know, like, say you go surfing to escape an abusive relationship, or then you're not facing that reality, and you're not actually going to address the abuse that's happening in that relationship. And that's what I mean with any form of escapism being unhealthy, essentially.
It's brilliant.
And Yolande, maybe I can just tag onto that. That's exactly what I mean by facing our stories, and telling our stories and confronting them. And don't always feel good, but we've got to find a way to face our story and tell it in whatever creative way we tell it. But we validate what we go through, and by doing that we actually do two things. We reduce our stress levels because we acknowledge that we're really going through this, and we also increase our sense of self-acceptance, which is also very, very helpful things to do, especially if you do want to escape. Confronting your story, telling your story, it's your truth and it's your song. It's going to guide you through times of uncertainty and pain.
That's brilliant. Hey, I mean, obviously there's good escape where you just, doing something different, getting some fresh air, breaking routine. But I love what you're saying. I think, to me, how I'm hearing what you're saying is, for me, I think of self-awareness. So kind of just naming my emotions, naming what I'm feeling, talking to someone about it, kind of processing. I am a bit of an external processor, but processing my thoughts, my emotions. And I think a lot of people, we don't actually know different emotions. We're kind of either angry or happy or sad, and that's it. There's actually a multitude of emotions. And I think the more we grow our self-awareness and our ability to understand what's actually going on, because sometimes it's, one area of life that we're really taking strain in, and that can just pervade all of life. And we can feel like all of life is falling apart. We're actually, as we process and talk, we're able to, in a sense, compartmentalize, some of our struggles. I've got a question that's just come in around insomnia. So, someone's husband, they're waking up every night 2-3 hours. It's just the anxiety, unable to sleep. I mean, is that kind of normal? What's your recommendation there?
I think, Don, in this time, it can be normal, but when it starts to, like I said, when it starts to actually affect your functioning, then it needs to be addressed. And I would then often, in that case, I want to say it might be a long answer to say like how to deal with insomnia, because for me it often takes like multiple sessions with a client in addressing insomnia, but it might be worth seeking help. Like I think all of us have experienced some insomnia over this time, where we've had nights where we've just really struggled with sleep. But if it's starting to happen regularly and it's affecting your functioning, it's affecting your relationships, it's affecting your work functioning, then I would say it would be better to actually reach out to someone. And a good starting point is you don't necessarily immediately have to contact a psychiatrist, psychologist, even GPs. They are trained to also help with this. You don't necessarily have to take medication. That's not necessarily the only route you can take. And therapy can also work very well for that. There's some, like I said, it might be a bit of a long answer, more than we have time for now, to speak about how do we actually treat them.
Well, I do want us to spend a little bit of time just talking about how we help ourselves or each other. By the way, Yolande, I know Claudette's watching, and I would love her to just post the link in the comments to that article you mentioned. Can you just mention it again? And Claude if you can just Google that and post it in the comments for us, Claude. It was Henry Cloud's comments.
So I do have the article. So
okay, we'll get it from you and we'll post it.
I will send it on to Claudette as soon as I log off, and then I'll send it on to her and she can post it.
Okay, great. We'll post it when we're talking about the kids in a little while. Okay, guys, so the next question we want to answer or just chat about briefly is, what can we do, to support others, to support ourselves? At what points do you think you need to talk to someone? And if you do need to talk to someone about your mental well-being, who do you talk to? Where can you go? Just so you know, there will, in the description to the video, there are some helpful articles, websites, places you can go look. So check that out. But yeah, any comments around that? How do you know when you actually need help? And maybe you can also talk for a moment to those who kind of have those pre-existing conditions that are really intensified, anxiety, depression in this season.
So Don, for people that have pre-existing conditions, they need to make sure that they remain in touch with the people that have been providing treatment to them, whether it's been a counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. And if they haven't been, that they reach out. Most mental health professionals are doing online sessions at this time. So, you know, I think people might have the anxiety, can't go and see someone, but actually most of us are, online at the moment. So that's important. And I think in terms of how do I know that I need to seek help, like I said, when it's starting to affect your daily functioning, or when it's causing you so much distress that you can't function, you feel so overwhelmed by it, that's when you need to seek help. And, you know, again, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, GPs. The reason why I mention GPs is they're often a starting point and they have a network. So they know who to refer you to. And I know, Don and Luke, you also have resources. So I'm actually going to point people towards you as well.
Brilliant, yeah.
Also, I know that you also have a list of therapists that you can refer people to if need be. And in terms of supporting others, it is that connection. That's how we support others. We need to remain connected as much as possible. Do what you can do within the legal limits to connect with people. Keep it legal, but if it is speaking over the wall or in the driveways, like I said, or the jungle gym conversations with the neighbors, but with friends and family, keep on checking in with each other, keep on having those phone calls, those WhatsApp video calls. Yes, it isn't the same as face-to-face connection, but it is still support.
Brilliant. And we've just got a couple of minutes left. So, sorry, Yolande, we've just got a few minutes left. I want to give Lara a chance to jump in. Also, just to say, like a video chat, like just seeing faces has also been an incredible gift to me. But Laura, anything you want to jump in? Sorry to cut you off, Yolande. We've got a couple of minutes left. Go for it, Laura.
I feel like I might have said this before, but I'm going to say it again because I don't think we can say it enough, but recognizing presence. So no, you might not be with your best friend, but there may be, as Yolande said, there may be a neighbor you've never met. There's a new morning, there's a new being seen. I mean, I'm out every single morning with the kids exercising, and there's just such a sense of community. It's like being in some sort of old school movie where everyone's sort of moseying up and down the streets. And I think that for me, it is better to give than to receive. So most people that know me will be able to attest to this, that I will be the person that will always say a very warm hello, and I'd love to give you a hug. But just really acknowledging people and acknowledging the people in your street and recognizing that just seeing them this morning, it wasn't an accident. You know, you were actually going to come and see each other today, and just to recognize the beauty and the sacredness of each other's humanity. And that also provides opportunity to tell each other's stories to each other.
Brilliant.
I mean, my neighbor, I think, knows my life more intimately than I do. So when she says, "How are you?" I say, "Well, I don't know, you tell me how I am based on how loudly I've been yelling." But yeah, just to recognize the sacredness that is in each one of us, and to see each other in a new light, and to take the opportunity just to really acknowledge each other's humanity and authenticity and community.
Thanks, man. I think as a pastor that I'm particularly mindful of, I think the elderly, so grannies, grandpas, empty nesters. I think sometimes we overlook them as a generation who actually really need us in this time. So if you're watching and you're fall into that category, take care of yourself, reach out, build in those habits, really give this a good listen. But, for the rest of you, if you're a bit younger, phone your parents, think of those that are maybe single, alone, elderly. Really is a difficult time. Adapting to media and online meetings and gatherings, I think, has been particularly challenging. So I've been praying a lot for kind of that older generation, those empty nesters. And I also just want to say to us, I think if you do have a pre-existing condition, so I'm only speaking from experience. I have been on depression medication for many years now. And I just think it's important for you to just stay connected with how you're feeling. Chat to your psychologist, set up a meeting. They are working online. Just gauge how things are going if you're concerned. I think don't go it alone. Don't, keep fighting on. Just have that connection, have that conversation, that consultation, and get the help that you need to navigate this time. Just quickly around, there was a question asked about referrals. So if you go to your GP, they can then refer you to a clinical psychologist. Is that correct?
Yeah, most GPs have connections. There's also various websites, like Therapy Route is one of them, where most psychologists and counselors put their services. So you can find someone in your area. And then I think for people psychologist, that I would suggest that they contact you or Luke or whoever their pastor is, because they also have also have a list of people that they can refer to. I think the great thing is, I just want to say, there's actually quite a lot of Christian therapists in Cape Town, and that are very good. So
Donnie,
so
maybe can I jump in?
Yeah, we've got about 2 minutes. Go for it.
Yeah, just in 30 seconds, just to say that if you just follow some of the links that we're going to post after the session tonight, there's actually a huge movement of psychologists who are offering their services pro bono online. And so for the first time that I'm aware of in 17 years of being involved in trying to mobilize psychologists to provide support to everyone, psychologists have actually come together and really are wanting to offer their services. So it's a moment where there is accessibility to mental health services in a way that I have not seen before, and it's actually really, really beautiful to see how this community of people have come together and said, this is what we're going to do to make a difference.
Brilliant, man. So guys, we're going to have to transition shortly just to chat about kids. It's taken much longer than we, maybe we'll follow up at some point, but I think tonight's been fantastic. And thank you guys for your time. I know you're busy. Luke, you're great to have you partnering with me. I just love some of this, the stuff we've chatted about, those positive routines, the habits, healthy exercise, I think self-awareness, talking to people, opening up, the scriptures, spiritual disciplines, all these things are so helpful. Luke, why don't you go for it, mate?
I was going to just say, can I burn for like 1 minute on what I'd love, things that are helpful for people to do that I think?
You can, buddy, go for it.
I'd say, start the morning with prayer and scripture before you reach for any device. Laura was talking about the truth setting you free. That's where I face my truth, is in prayer and reading the scriptures as many mornings as you can. Have a gratitude ritual. Think of 1 or 2 things in your day that you're grateful for and carry those with you. Even share them with someone else. Exercise. Exercise not as a form of escapism, but as a human being. We don't have a body, we are bodies. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. You are a body. We will have bodies one day in heaven. And so looking after your physical body is one way we look after ourselves. In a week, find some focal practices. Focal practice is something you do that just totally absorbs you, not as a way of escaping, but just take a break. Like for me, it's woodworking. For some people, it's gardening. For those of you who are married, love making is one of those things. If you're married, that's something that's very helpful in this time. And so I'd say that one. And then we spoke of fear. A great way to drive out fear is in prayer. Prayer helps us. I'm learning to pray in this time better than I've ever prayed before. Last 2, Sabbath. Sabbath is about celebration, and it's about ceasing. Ceasing from working and worrying and about the world, trusting that God's got it, and celebrating the best things in your life. And so whatever that looks like at this time, we should look forward to Sabbath and towards the end of the week, and then look back on Sabbath as the next week starts. And the last one is worship. Worship is a fantastic way to lose yourself in God's story a little bit as well, and it brings a helpful perspective to our lives. So that's a quick punt. It's 90 seconds, but
it's fantastic, Luke. And I think, as Christ followers, that the Christian community, small groups, those connections are invaluable to us in this time. I've been holding on to Philippians 4:7, which speaks about bringing our requests to God, bringing our lives before God. It's showing our dependence on Him, asking for His help, asking for His assistance. I think for me, it's a way of putting God at the center of, my problems, my issues, my thoughts, my hopes, my fears. And as I kind of pray through these things, it's like that reordering kind of occurs in my life, that processing, that ability to actually see the bigger truth, maybe what God's doing in a season. So yeah, that's all fantastic stuff. Guys, I'm going to call it here. Luke, if you don't mind messaging Sam, she can join us. Go for it, Luke.
I'm off. Thanks.
Yeah, so Yolande, thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate it. The rest of us are going to stay. So thanks, Yolande.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Yolande.
Bye.
Like musical chairs.
Yeah. So guys, if you've just joined us, you've probably already been here for a while. We've taken a bit longer than we had planned, but I think it's been a fantastic time. We've got Laura Fisher with us. We've got Luke. We're just about to be joined by Sam. And we're about to move into talking about, hey Sam, we're going to move into talking about the mental health and well-being of our kids. And how we support our kids, how we get into our kids. And so, we're going to, if you just joined us, you've probably already been here for a while. We've taken a bit longer than we had planned, but I think it's been a fantastic time. I can hear my voice. Can you guys hear my voice in the background? We've got Luke.
Donnie, I've got you in stereo,
joined
mate.
by Sam. I don't know what's happening.
There we go.
Okay.
We sorted it, I think, mate.
Great. So we're going to make this kind of a standalone portion. So just wanted to say a few introductory comments, and that is to say that, we're here to serve as pastors and as health professionals. We're really trusting that tonight's going to be helpful for you as you seek to parent your kids, as you help your kids process. Maybe you're a caregiver, and we really want to support you tonight, help you realize that maybe what you're experiencing at home is normal. I mean, I think we've all experienced moments and emotions and intensity with our kids that might be new or overwhelming or relentless. Also lots of great times and great opportunities. But again, what we're going to do is we're going to answer 3 key questions that are going to guide the conversation. Feel free to ask your questions on the comment section. You can WhatsApp me. My name is on the screen. Some of you did post kids' questions earlier. If you don't mind re-commenting on those so I can track them on Facebook. Let's quickly introduce ourselves. So I'm Donovan, one of the pastors at Common Ground Constantiaberg. Just so excited to be able to serve these moments and help us a little bit in our parenting. Luke, over to you, then Sam, then Laura.
Oh, thanks, Donnie. So yeah, I'm one of the leaders in our Common Ground South Peninsula congregation. And so connected to a lot of people. We're a congregation with loads of kids. That's one of the distinctives about our church. And so connected to loads of parents like that, but also a dad of 3 small kids ourselves. And so we're not just watching this from a distance, but we're experiencing this in the trenches as a family too. My kids are 10, 8, and 5, I think. And so we're very much in the throes of this.
Brilliant. Sam?
Hi everyone, I'm Sam Pretorius and I'm a member at Constantiaberg with Don. So I'm a counselling psychologist and I work mainly in private practice, and I also lecture and supervise students in their training. I used to work at a school, so I was at a school for 3 years, just over 3 years. So lots of time with little ones and their parents. So I'm hoping I can add some value in the space tonight. Oh, and sorry, and I'm a mom of a 2-year-old. That's very important. I'm a mom of a 2-year-old, so also busy living the trying to work and mom and wife all at the same time during lockdown.
Brilliant. Laura, are you unfrozen? Are you with us? I think Laura's probably having some connectivity issues, so we're going to carry on. Sam, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us today. I know it's crazy busy, and just so you know, you've helped our family so much, so we really appreciate you and excited to get into tonight. So we want to ask those 3 big questions, and the first one is just generally, what can we expect to see in our kids in this time? You know, I don't know, it's difficult to speak about the full range of our kids, but as best you can, try hit as wide array as you can. What can we expect to see, experience in behavior, etc., just freewheel for a bit.
Okay, so yeah, John, it definitely does depend on their age, obviously, but also on their temperament and their personality that each child comes with. So, but I'm going to speak generally, and hopefully it hits home for different people. So it depends on those things, but definitely the types of behaviors you are used to seeing in your child. Sometimes the ones that concern you, perhaps they're a little bit clingy, or perhaps they don't sleep that well, or those types of things. You're probably going to see an exacerbation of those. So the child who has always been a little clingy, potentially now overly clingy, those types of things. So what you've already been concerned about now is probably more concerning. Also, regression. So we speak about regression a lot with child psychology, and that's when a child goes backwards in their development. Don't panic, it's not permanent. But for example, if a child was sleeping through, now they're not. Or if a child was potty trained and now they're having accidents. A child who could independently do their homework and now they're wanting mom and dad's input the whole time. So we talk about that as regression. So going backwards in a child's development rather than the forward trajectory we would like to see. So those are quite typical. I think also, given the fact that the kids haven't seen, are we frozen? Or are we fine? No, we're fine.
Fine.
Given the fact that the kids haven't seen their friends for weeks now, loneliness is definitely something a lot of parents are reporting. And a lot of parents are talking about frustration, really high levels of frustration in their children. So I think if we say, a lot of what you already see in your children, but exacerbated, regression, and then loneliness and frustration, and then definitely anxiety. We know, unfortunately, kids this generation struggle with anxiety a lot. Take away COVID-19. But just like adults who struggle with anxiety in normal life, it's exacerbated now. And also around like germ phobias and germ fears, getting sick, concerns about family members getting sick or people dying. Those are obviously also quite common at the moment and very understandable.
Well, Laura, welcome back. We kind of just charged on, so you just struggle away with your internet.
I'm hotspotting off my phone now. I have no idea what happened to my internet. Sorry.
Thanks, man. I just wanted to, I've got a question that's coming in here in terms of what we can expect to see in our kids. My daughter, she's 10 years old, been extremely emotional over the smallest thing during lockdown, questioning her connection to God, experiencing lots of guilt and anxiety. So, you know, how do you deal with these things constructively? I mean, I guess in some ways moving the conversation on a little bit to talk about how we support our kids. And so, you know, we can maybe bring those questions together. You know, what can we expect to see, and also how do we support them and coach them? So yeah, what about this little beautiful girl who's just anxious and questioning a connection with God and just emotional over everything?
Laura, do you want to start, or do you want me to jump in?
I can speak into that, Sam.
Sure.
I think just also having at least one child who very much has gone through that experience is, I think that it is normal that they're feeling very, very overly emotional, especially kids who struggle to regulate their own emotions and start questioning everything and start to snowball. And often I find that it's quite linked into them being tired or hungry or overwhelmed overwhelmed with schoolwork. So I think that the importance of having completely open communication lines with your children is really, really key. And I know that's not easy because not all kids like to speak, but just being present to them and letting them know that it's okay that you feel this way, and you are loved and you are lovable, and I'm here for you. I think that those are probably some of the things that I would say. I don't have an emotional girl. I've got 3 very volatile sons. But yeah, I think that the tendency to snowball and then you start to question everything, often just bringing children back into their bodies and back to literally their breath, can actually really be quite powerful. And just reiterating, you're loved and you're lovable. You're loved and you're lovable.
Beautiful. Sam?
And I'll pick up from where Laura's gone. So I'm going to speak quite generally, and hopefully some of these will help the mom with a 10-year-old girl. But I think so much of it comes down to connecting with our kids. And I think, and I speak, like, everything I'm saying to other parents, I'm saying to myself, like, twofold. I think because we've got a lot of time with our children at the moment and that we're in each other's space, we can be under the illusion that we're connecting with them. I feel the same about spouses at the moment. You know, because you're in each other's space all the time, you feel like you think you're connecting, but there's no connection.
Wow.
You just like living past each other. So I think to authentically connect with our children. Today I found myself, I was half on my phone, half with my daughter, and I was like, what are you doing? I just put my phone away and rather had a shorter time but with her, as opposed to this multitasking for longer. And then one of the things that, regardless of what's causing the child's distress, and we know the stress at the moment is so high, but empathizing with the child and saying to them, you're feeling really nervous at the moment, aren't you? Like, this is really scary for you right now, because often kids, depending on the age, don't have the vocabulary for what they're feeling. So you can imagine, I always compare it to physical symptoms. If you go to the doctor and you've got a whole bunch of physical symptoms, but you don't know the doctor can't tell you what's wrong with you, that's scary. So a child's having all these experiences in their body, but they don't know what it is. So if we can say to them, wow, you're feeling really lonely today, or you're so angry right now, just giving them a label can be really, really helpful. And then the older they are, expanding their emotional vocabulary. And then I did a video the other day, the one that Don was referring to earlier, that he found helpful. So Don, I hope we can make that available, because
the link is in the description to.
Oh, is it there already? Okay, great.
Yeah.
It's just a quick, easy technique to try and ascertain how your children are feeling in a creative way. And I think, Don, you mentioned when we were preparing for this, like, how do you ask your child how they're doing without implanting ideas in their head? You know, so are you scared of mom and dad dying? You want to make it more open-ended, because otherwise we can actually project some of our own fears and anxieties onto them. You know, so you want to keep it quite open-ended, but empathizing and normalizing their experience to say, you know, you're feeling really scared right now, and that's okay, and that's normal. Your brother's feeling quite nervous right now too, or your friends are as well. I really believe in physical movement. I think our bodies, I know the research tells us our bodies store a lot of our trauma. And this is traumatic. What we're going through it's a trauma, and our bodies store it. So when I talk about kids and movement, I mean, they don't need to exercise in terms of getting fit, but just moving, whether that's putting on music and having them jump around the lounge, or jumping on a trampoline, or running on the spot, whatever it is, like actually getting them to physically move is so, so important. And then helping.
Sam, can I ask you a question?
Sure,
Luke, you can also jump in if you want. You know, so would you say that, like, a child that's being emotional like that all the time, do you think that goes down to that, you know, maybe 1 or 2, you know, core emotions that are overflowing? Or is it just a general state? You know, like, is it worth trying to figure out what that one thing is, or just kind of go with the emotions as they come and just roll with it as a general state?
Laura, do you want to say something? Do you want me to go?
No, I can offer some
Okay, carry on.
some input.
Laura's not dealing with
And
emotions, she's dealing with broken appliances.
I'm dealing with high levels of testosterone. So I think everyone, I don't know if everyone was here at the beginning, but I have 3 boys. So I've got skinned elbows, bruised knees, a tired body, and I just come here with a humble heart. So I'm really just giving kind of my own perspectives. In terms of getting to that one thing, I think I would take a few steps back first, depending on the age of the child. So as soon as we're speaking about a 10-year-old child, and Donnie, I don't know if you were referring to your younger girls, which maybe Sam can relate better to, but I think for the 10-year-old, I think a lot of things, there's a lot of uncertainty that our children are experiencing. And we were saying a little bit earlier that uncertainty kind of disrupts our trajectory. So we have an envisioned plan for our life. And a child who I rode with to Cork Bay this morning said to me, I thought 2020 was going to be this awesome year, and now my mum's just told me that I have to be I have to be online at school online today, and she didn't even discuss it with me. And I said to him, you know, I think we are trying to cope as parents, so you can be honest with a 10-year-old. They are trying to cope without any social structure, so they cannot access their friends. They do not have school that they're going to every day, and they do not have sport. And I think those 3 things, and they don't have spiritual connection, which they often connect into church and Sunday school. So I think those 3 things for me are often, certainly at 10, what's creating a lot of the kind of overflow of emotion. And it's this big, scary, unknown thing. I mean, Alex, my middle child, said to me today when he was trying to watch something on YouTube that he had to watch for school, he's like, oh my gosh, another coronavirus advert. And I mean, these adverts are very, very provocative. And I said to him, you know, my boy, yes, it is scary, but let's just revisit the facts. So revisiting the facts with a 10-year-old helps. Also keeping them in rhythm with school and trying to create opportunity for them to connect socially. So the boy that I was speaking about a couple of minutes ago, he's an only child. So how do you create that connection for only children? I think that's a real struggle for parents. And I think, as Sam said, keep them moving. And don't fixate on trying to get to the root cause, because by the time you've got there, it's become about 20 other different things. And the reality is that there's just a general, I mean, I say that unless there is a root cause that you know of. But if it seems very generalized and not connected, then it's just this general uncertainty and anxiety, which will manifest itself differently for different children. And I think, so keep the schooling going, keep the socializing going as far as is humanly possible.
I guess our kids thrive in the rhythm and routines.
I
just wanted to move the...
Yeah, and Danny, I just wanted to say, keep the spiritual connection and help them to understand that connecting to God is not necessarily just what you think it is. There's lots of other ways to do that.
Wow. I think I want to ask Luke in just a moment, like, what are you, you're quite an intentional guy. So, are you taking time to connect with your kids, and what does that look like? Because I think I love what you said, Sam, like, we're around our kids a lot, but we're not necessarily connecting with them. And I had a question asked just around, the importance of actually, in a sense, doing, maybe you used to do date moments with your kids, multiple kids. And so just the importance of connection with kids and actually, that heartfelt connection, that honesty, just conversations, some fun, maybe some spirituality conversations is helpful. Luke, are you doing anything at the moment? I've put you on the spot.
Great. No, absolutely, bro. And it's a great question. Just had 1 or 2 wins in this area, had loads of losses, but 1 or 2 I can share. That's a good one. our dishwasher broke. Okay, that's the story. So we're washing the dishes by hand every night. And the other night there was a lot of dishes. And so I ended up, my son was on to wash the dishes. He's 10 years old. And so I said, my boy, I'm going to come and do this with you. And I said, I'll wash, you dry. And we washed the dishes for probably about half an hour, the two of us. It was the most incredible little bonding experience. We just sat and yapped the whole way through washing dishes. And so, you spoke about maybe you used to go on a date or whatever, but actually sometimes it's taking the other thing is cook. Ben and I are now cooking curries together. That's become our thing during lockdown. So it's taking the already existing things in your life and trying to pull your kids into that as much as is possible and is appropriate, obviously. Exercise in the morning at 8 o'clock, and then we go out and I take my kids with me. We do little routines, and it's just trying to incorporate them where you can into your life, because after that, I will say it goes a little bit pear-shaped, because Lauren's got to do this and I've got to do this, and we've got to palm them off and it gets frenzied. But those moments of connection are in the ordinary, I'll say that, but they are special, man, really special.
And I guess that helps with the bit of the regression and just confidence and routine. Guys, I've got a whole lot of questions coming through. Do you mind if I ask another question, or Lar, do you quickly want to add to that? Are you happy?
Go for it.
Don, can I just add
Sam.
one other thing I just want to mention, because I'll kick myself if I don't afterwards. But just going back to what Laura said about the structure and routine, I think we underestimate how much predictability school gives our children. And taking school away, they're used to a bell that tells them what to do every half an hour, most of them. Taking that away just really derails them. So having some type of structure, it doesn't have to be regimental. And for your younger ones to actually have visual pictures, to say like a little picture of breakfast, and then a picture of exercise, and then we're going to do schoolwork, and then we're going to do this. So they know what's coming because they're used to a timetable. Another thing is to let them, because there's so little control at the moment over life, to let them have control in certain areas. So little things like, do you want to have fish fingers or chicken nuggets for lunch? Which one are you going to have? You get to choose. It's little things like that. Are you going to wear your red t-shirt or your blue t-shirt? But just giving them some choice in life, because there's so much they don't have choice over at the moment. And then there was something else. Oh, I wanted to say, and the teachers listening might not like me for saying this, but I do think take some of the scholastic pressure off. I think kids aren't going to remember what they learned in their maths lesson during lockdown. They're going to remember how they felt. They're going to remember if they felt safe, if they felt secure, if they felt scared, if they felt the tension in the house. That's what they're going to remember. So I would say, tentatively, take some of the academic pressure off.
Yeah, it's about nurturing, making sure that nurturing's there, and then the education's, part of that, but that nurture is kind of important. So I wanted just two questions around teenagers, maybe older kids. The one is, how do you parent your kids, around the expectations that this thing could end, but you actually don't know when, and so you're kind of trying to manage expectations. That's kind of the one thing. I don't know how you manage that. The other question is maybe a little more serious in a sense, is that, sometimes it's hard to know what's happening in a teenager's life, I've heard, at the best of times. They're a bit guarded, they're starting to stick to themselves, maybe chatting to their friends more, hopefully that connection's there. But what are the signs to look for that you think your teenage kid might be at risk, or is maybe, going through a mental challenge that you're unaware of, even to the extent of potentially being suicidal? Are there signs to look for? So both the expectation thing and then teenagers and knowing what's actually going on and signs to look for.
Okay, I'll speak to the expectation one. I think it's so hard because our kids often look to us, even the teenagers sometimes, for answers and clarity. And at the moment, we can't give it. It would be, it would be dishonest to tell them we know what's going on and we know when this is going to come to an end and things like that. So I think it's being honest with them that this is uncertain time, and just normalizing their anxiety and just sharing with them. I'm mindful when I say this, I say it cautiously, that this is also uncertain times for you as well. With teenagers, you can be, more honest. And I think it's also important that they realize that their parents also have emotions and are relatable in that sense. But because there are so many unknowns, we have to just sit with them in the uncertainty. That sounds very fluffy and very Psych 101, but you do have to sit with them in the uncertainty, because we don't have definite answers for them, and it's just being there with them during the times of uncertainty. Laura, do you want to add anything on that one?
Sam, I'll just kick us off with the kind of how do you recognize when things are needing a more kind of a different sort of intervention. But I'll let you speak into that. It's a bit more within your scope of practice. But the one thing that I think is really important that the research shows, and that I can attest to, is that you need to share how you're doing with your teenagers. So, and if you haven't nurtured that in your family from quite young, it's going to be hard to introduce, but it actually, the research shows that it can be nurtured quite quickly, even with teenagers. So I'll give you an example. Every story for a child from 3 until, I don't know, 20, every story ends with them being the problem. So if you're under a lot of stress at work, or you're just very stressed out about COVID-19 and the uncertainty that we're experiencing, or you're feeling frustrated, or you're feeling angry, and your child says to you, how are you, Mum? And you say, oh, fine. Then that's what you're going to get back. And I think that they know you're not fine. They can see it because they are naturally intuitive. And unless it's really being beaten out of them, they are naturally intuitive in terms of emotion. And so that maybe that's a bit harsh to say naturally been beaten out of them, but most children are quite intuitive around emotion. So if you say you're fine and Ethan says to me, but Mum, I can see you're not fine. And I don't take the time to explain to him, okay, Ethan, no, I'm actually not fine. I'm feeling quite stressed out. I've got a very busy day at work today. I've got meetings. I'm not sure how I'm going to manage your homeschool. What he will perceive is Mum's not fine and I've done something wrong. And so in terms of how to start to open up conversation with teenagers, the only way you can really do that is by modeling to them how you want them to be open with you. And so being honest about our feelings. And I think if you struggle to know what you feel as an adult, then I would suggest, and we can pop it on as a resource, but download an emotions chart and start to work out how you feel if you've got teenagers. Because if you can't share with them how you feel, they can't share back how they feel. So I think just as sort of a broad principle, in terms of it moving into a space where you should be a lot more worried because there's behavior that you're very concerned about, Sam, I think as a counseling psychologist, you'd be better positioned to speak into that.
Thanks. I think what Laura's saying is so true, about being authentic with your children. I think what especially Laura's saying, the older ones, the teenagers, where you can be more real, but they do pick up. So just, sorry, I'm jumping back a step. Also think all of us as parents need to be mindful of the conversations we're having as adults, because the kids are picking it up. So if we're talking about the financial strain this is having on us, the kids are picking it up. If we're talking about how we're struggling emotionally or how sick Granny is, they're picking it up. Sorry, that's an aside. But when it comes to the teenagers, you definitely want to look out for behavioral change. But we know a lot of teenagers, and it's developmentally normal, are wanting to spend time on their own and in their rooms and on their phones. So that a lot of that is developmentally normal, and at the moment they're trying to connect with their peers even more so. But you want to look out for changes. So if your teenager is not coming out of their room for meals, for example, like they used to, and now they're staying away, that would be a cause for concern. You want to look at things like eating habits. Are they eating a lot less than normal? Are they losing weight? Are they eating more than normal? Are you concerned? Are they sleeping all day long, or are they not sleeping at all? Those types of physical changes are definitely warning signs to look out for. if you are so lucky that your teenager allows you to follow their social media posts, that's often where teenagers are quite honest and quite vulnerable, interesting enough, is out there in public. So you might, I mean, I work with quite a few teenage girls, and they will put very raw feelings out there on social media. And you know, that can also be a way to gauge how they're feeling. Whether, regardless of the age of the child, I think it's always great, and it speaks to what Laura's talking about connecting with them on how you're feeling. So from as young as possible, but again, I don't think it's ever too late to start it, but starting the connection like at supper time or whenever it is, to say 1 thumbs up for the day and 1 thumbs down for the day. Or what is a mountain or a valley, or a mountain and a valley. And I think what's helpful again there is that you are sharing that I've had a high and a low today, and that's okay. And it gives them permission to also experience highs and lows. So if you can also ascertain from those check-ins how they're doing, that can also be an indicator. And I think also teenagers don't get tucked into bed necessarily at night, but I think going into their bedroom with their permission at night time, when they almost, I want to say, their guards are down a little bit and the busyness of the day is over, and you're not rushed to get to your next meeting or your next Zoom session, but just checking in, like, how are you? Let's talk about how you're doing. But as Laura said, it'll be easier if you've been doing that for a while, but I think it's never too late to start.
And Sam, just
carry on.
Just a quote from Brené Brown. She says, "Together we will cry and face fear and grief, and I will want to take away your pain, but instead I'll sit with you and teach you how to feel it." And I think that's something that really we cannot underestimate. We don't need to, and we cannot take away the pain of the losses that our children are experiencing and the uncertainty, but we can sit with them and together hold that feeling and sit and teach each other how to feel, and that no feeling's bad. It's a feeling.
Like Yolande said in the adult section, a feeling might not feel pleasant, but it's not bad. So it's to validate their experience of whatever it is they're feeling. And just to say, sorry, Don, just to say, if people are, very concerned and there's risk to, suicidal type of thinking and behavior, regardless of the fact that we're in lockdown, the clinics and the inpatient treatments, they are running. The groups for teenagers are running. There are online groups that are running. I know of a group starting on the 28th. So there are resources out there, particularly for teens, because they feel their emotions very intensely. Just cast your mind back just a few years, Don. And you feel your emotions very intensely as a teenager.
I want to just move on a little bit with some more questions, but I love what you're saying. And I can imagine it's those small gains, as you start to do these things, don't expect your kids to, just respond with all this truth. It's coaching and walking and mentoring and slowly kind of opening those taps, which is great. So you spoke a little bit about, so you got 13-year-olds, is it good to give our kids maybe a little bit more screen time at the moment? They want it, it's a lot of social connection, even gaming, but also this fear that they're actually just escaping and, getting lost into gaming. I mean, do you think there's a helpful balance there? Just 1 or 2 comments, not too many. We've got a few other questions, but yeah.
Laura, do you want to speak from your boys' point of view, perhaps?
Okay, so I'm very militant in this area, so I'm going to speak very honestly. We are a non-gaming family. The boys know that. Do they have access to screens? Yes, but it is extremely controlled. And because it's been so for their whole lives, they rarely actually even ask for it. We've always said, if you want to do something, let's do it in real life. Now it's a little different now because actually we can't let them do these things in real life. But I am a firm believer, after having traveled 18-hour car trips many, many, many times in my childhood with my 5 siblings, that boredom is often the greatest gift we can give our kids. And the boredom, they're not bored. because they're constantly connected and they're constantly engaged. And actually, I think that there is, yes, they're having to be online. You don't feel that it's in those moments of boredom that creativity will start to spark. And that's actually what gives them a sense of autonomy, mastery, which are all really important things for kids to develop.
Yeah, that's great. Actually creating that space. And Sam, for those parents that are maybe caught in that place.
Sure. So, Law, I think yours is like the ideal, but for the rest of us mere mortals.
No, I mean, I don't want to present an ideal scenario. And I say to Dave, the boys are going to grow up absolutely, this is going to be something they're going to tell their kids. My mom always said we're a non-gaming family. That's fine. I can live with that.
Okay. So some of the kids that I work with, what I think what their parents have done, which I think is quite lovely. So first of all, when it comes to screen time, it has to come, well, in a healthy way. I think it has to come after school. So I wouldn't allow, like my daughter's too young for this, but I wouldn't allow any gaming or screen time until late in the afternoon, personally. I think you've got to prioritize the school. Like I said, I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself here. I don't think put too much pressure on, but I think there needs to be expectation that there is schoolwork being done, and then allow them to be, I would say they have to have been outside first. They have to have done something creative, like that screen time comes as a last, almost like a reward. You've done your schoolwork, you've done your physical exercise, you've done your creative thing, and now you get some screen time. And I think what some families that I've been working with, what they've done is they've set up regular gaming sessions for their kids, so they know for example, from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, these boys all connect on a particular game for an hour, and it's a shared agreement amongst the parents, so it's limited, but it is a way for the kids to connect with one another. So I think that's quite a nice controlled way of doing it.
Great. And
Sam, I must just say as well that bear in mind that I've got 3 boys that are very close in age, so they've got a brotherhood.
Exactly.
It makes a big difference.
They can cause a lot of damage when they team together.
Yeah.
Luke, over to you, mate.
Guys, I'd point you to this book over here. I don't know if you can see it.
It's closer.
It's called The Tech Wise Family by Andy Crouch. I read it on lockdown because I wanted some skills in this area. It's been brilliant. One of the things we've done that's sort of connected to the device, yes, we've put device limits in place as a family, but we've also asked the question is, what is our family for? And what are the places in our home that we're together the most? And how do we, in those places, make sure that we shape them to facilitate interaction, relationship, and character formation? So we've actually I found that it's only got 5 strings out of 6, a nylon string guitar that we found in our garage. We've put it down there. We've put my wife's keyboard down there. And now my 8-year-old is clanging along on the keyboard, and my 10-year-old son can play 4 chords after a week. What has happened is there's nudges. There's things we can do as parents that are nudges. A nudge is like when you're trying to pay for your goodies at the grocery aisle, and then they put all those chocolates there. They can't make you buy chocolates, but they nudge you to do it. By putting the TV on full display in front of everyone, or having the device around all the time, it's a nudge. But by simply putting a guitar in front of the TV, or putting a keyboard there, now you've got to move it out of the way to get to the TV. And it's those little nudges towards things that inspire creativity and things that pull us together in relationships. So we took all our board games and piled them in front of our TV. What happens is now you sit down, instead of going, put it on, and we go, hey, what about playing this game now? It's just a nudge. By trying to say, what is the place we're most together, and how do we arrange that space to inspire creativity and relationship? And that's been helpful for us.
That's cool. A quick question from someone, and I certainly feel this. You got younger kids at home, and mom and dad are working, but you're at home, and the kids can't explain why you're here, but you don't want to play, and you feeling guilty. any words of advice for those parents that are just covered in guilt around that?
It's so hard. Yeah, Laura is living it. I'm living it. My husband and I are both trying to work. You're living it. We've got a 2.5-year-old who doesn't understand any of this. Today she said to me, Mom, don't get corones. I mean, she has no idea what that means, but Mom, don't get corones. So that's just, so she doesn't understand any of this. So what we've done, and we don't always get it right, but it works most of the time for us, we tag in and tag out. So we have a big schedule up on our fridge, and these are my non-negotiables, like my sessions where I'm with clients. These are my husband's meetings that he has, and we tag in and tag out. So 1 hour I'm working, the next hour I'm on parenting duty, and then my husband's working. And it's definitely not ideal. I mean, none of this is ideal. We're just making it work as best as we can. Something I also find, my daughter wants to know what I'm doing behind the closed door all day long. So this morning I was supervising a group of students, and I brought her in here. I said, come say hello, come see what mommy's doing. So sometimes there's so much mystery what's happening behind that door. Just come and show them. They're like, oh, okay, then toddle off and go to dad. So I think sometimes just letting them see what we're doing, that it's not as exciting as they think it is. And then another strategy, we haven't done it because we haven't had to, because we have done this tag in, tag out. But for a little bit older children, if you just put a sign on the door, like a red sign means mom and dad are not available, and a green sign means they are, because otherwise it's a constant, can I come in yet? Can I come in yet? Just red is no, green is yes, and when can you come in?
Great. We've got a couple more questions. La, you want to just throw in something there quickly? Go for it.
I mean, it sucks, and I actually empathize. It's actually easier when your kids are a bit older.
Yeah.
Because you can have conversations with them. I'm sitting with a group of colleagues who have a 6-month-old baby and a 2.5-year-old toddler clambering on their screens, and I would say, if your work allows for it, give yourself permission to not be as productive as you usually are.
Yeah. And in fact, it's probably good to chat to your employer, tell them your circumstance. But I also find what's fantastic, what really helps me is when I'm not working, I walk out of the room, I go straight to the kids, hugs, focused attention, let them know daddy's finished working now. So also to know, like, these are my work hours, and actually I stop working at this time, and then I'm with my kids. And so, don't bother to send me a message after this time. I'm not working anymore. And those boundaries can get confused.
I think if possible, and it's definitely, again, not ideal, don't get me wrong, but work that doesn't have to be done in the moment, for example, a face-to-face meeting or a client session, if it can be done while your child's asleep, try and keep that stuff for nap time. Like my daughter, except for today for some strange reason, normally sleeps for 2 hours. So my husband and I know these 2 hours are like our sacred hours to get everything we need to get done that's non-negotiable in those 2 hours. And then nighttime, like, I don't like working at night, but it's becoming our new normal. I have a client who's booked as a session for like 9 o'clock in the evening. Is it ideal? No, but my daughter's asleep and I'm available, so I'm doing it. So yeah.
Just as a little out, you can contact me after hours if it's an emergency. I am a pastor after all. You get the gist of what I'm saying. For emergencies, Luke, do you want to comment at all? I wanted us to just draw this to a close. It's been really fantastic. So a couple more minutes. So if you're watching, we won't be much longer. Go for it, Luke.
Very briefly, to just pick on the importance of working out that routine. It's critical for, like, Lauren and I to try and work out when we overlap, like Sam said, but also the opportunity for our children to see what we do in our work. Just to point that out, normally we jump in the car and we drive over there and then we do our work and we come back. 100 years ago, kids grew up seeing what their parents did and going, wow, dad's so amazing, or mom's so amazing, look what they can do. Today, Ben and Bethany and Jack shot videos of them preaching and leading meetings. You know why? Because they've seen mom and dad doing that.
My kids have done the same.
I'll send you some of them, Johnny. But what it is our kids are having an opportunity. I mean, it depends on your industry and what you do, but just to say to parents, as much as possible, where it's possible, share with your kids what you do. Let them see you in your area of mastery. It's so good for them just to see you do what you do. and it's inspiring to them. I know it's messy though. And then the last thing I'd say is cut yourself some slack. None of us are getting this right. Ignore what social media are saying that, hey, this is so easy and whatever. It's hard for everyone. Cut yourself some slack.
Just two last questions. I think the one is, some, one-on-one connecting time with an under 5-year-old. What would you say is a good bonding connection thing to do with a youngie? And then can we just chat for a brief moment to single moms? Gee, I mean, man, we got to support and love on our single moms. Can we say, under 5-year-olds, and then maybe just some words to our single moms out there?
Or dads.
Yes,
Thank
or
you,
dads.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. You're right. Absolutely.
And so under 5, so I'm there in the momming time at the moment. My daughter's go-to is baking. She loves to bake, so we are constantly baking. Anything with sprinkles. So anything in our house that we make has sprinkles, regardless of whether the recipe calls for it or not. Creative activities, just letting them get messy. Finger painting, Play-Doh. Play-Doh is so easy to make. I mean, it's cheap and easy to make with some salt and some flour. Anything like that. My daughter loves doing my makeup, so my makeup has been wrecked. I get my makeup done for me every day. Just being outside, like just exploring, if you have an outside, exploring the garden, exploring whatever it is that you have available to you. Reading stories. They love stories and they love repetition. I mean, I think we know that as parents. They love repetition, and I think, be led by them as well. I think I fall into the trap of wanting to over prepare, like, oh, this is my activity for the morning, because it makes me feel good, to be honest. I feel like I've done my job as a mom. But I've learned I was like that the first while of lockdown, but now lockdown's gone on for too long to have these brilliant ideas every day. But to be led by her, today she wanted to count rocks. We were counting rocks, and she was giving me 4 rocks and then giving me 3 rocks. So really just being led by them. It takes very little to actually connect with a little one. You can use a piece of paper and you'll connect with them, or a stone. You don't need much. Laura, do you want to speak into that?
I sneezed earlier and people told me to do the elbow cough. La, if it's okay with you, I'd love to move on to the single moms. I just want to read a comment from one of our single moms also. My child is biting me black and blue, tantrum, screaming, hitting. He's 2.5. And, as a single parent, it's just quite crazy. So maybe you can chat to that one a little bit, and then just to single moms in general, and then we'll make this our last question.
Okay.
Single parents.
Single moms and single dads. I've got a number of friends who are single moms and single dads, and a lot of our students that are trying to navigate this as well. So first of all, the question is slightly about the single mom or single dad thing, but it's also about the emotional dysregulation that your children are experiencing.
What's dysregulation?
Dysregulate, in other words, they're not regulated. Biting mum and hitting her and, just being really aggressive and mean it's acting out, and children can't contain their emotions, especially if they're feeling very stressed. And so what I would say is I understand to a certain degree the amount of stress that single parents are under at the moment. It's almost unmanageable and almost unbearable. The thing is that children are like mirrors. So if we are very stressed, they will be very stressed. And I just had two kind of thoughts that I thought I would share. First of all, I think that we often rob each other of the opportunity to serve each other by not asking for help when we need it. And we were not designed to be isolated and to be on our own and to just do this on our own. So I would say, if at all possible, to reach out and be honest about your needs and ask for help. So community and connection is absolutely key. compassion towards yourself. You are navigating a pathway that is unbelievably difficult. And when I say compassion towards yourself, I would suggest trying, if at all possible, when you wake up in the morning, and Luke spoke into this a little bit at the end of the session we did on adults, but before you jump up and jump into autopilot, if at all possible, take some of your worrisome thoughts, take some of your anxiety, take some of your stress, and see yourself picking these worrisome thoughts off a tree and dropping them into a river and watching them float away. And try and extend that practice a little bit every single day. If you can start with 10 seconds of just taking your worrisome thoughts and just dropping it down. And I think we are able to shed quite a lot more of our anxiety and stress than we think we are able to shed. And we can do that through prayer and through meditation and just watching that which we do not need to hold on to and that which does not serve us, watching it float away. And it may be there an hour later, and then pop it back in the stream and let it float away. Show yourself extreme levels of compassion and ask for help if at all possible.
So I was thinking very much along the same lines with asking for help, and it might look different at the moment, but like an example, if you can say to your friend or to a grandparent to say, I need to go and have a shower and I haven't been able to do that today. Can you please just read my child a story online via WhatsApp call and just entertain for 10 minutes while I go and have a shower, you know, or whatever it might be. Or asking someone to drop, like, I know my mom, for example, when we've been through very difficult times and we haven't had capacity to literally go and make dinner, my mom would put frozen meals in my deep freeze, like those types of things. If you've got people in your life who can do that, just little things that can actually take such great strain off us. And then I was going to say, pick your battles. Really, like, for example, your 2.5-year-old, if your 2.5-year-old at the moment isn't eating a fully balanced diet, that would be the least of my concern right now. My child lives on margarita pizza, fish fingers, and scrambled egg. And at the moment, that's okay. Like, this is not the time where I'm going to try and get her into all the fruits and vegetables because we're in survival mode. So I really think pick your battles, because yeah, I empathize with single parents, because it's hard enough as with a very committed partner who's incredibly committed. So I can't begin to imagine what it's like on your own. So be kind to yourself, as Laura said. Just have realistic expectations of yourself during this time and pick your battles.
And brilliant. And brilliant for us just to be.
Can I just maybe throw one thing in?
And then, Luke, you can go after Laura.
Yeah, I wanted to also speak about the gift of single parenting, because I know that you also are able to give your children something that parents who are partnered are not able to give their children. And that is the gift of them really seeing you and seeing you through thick and thin, and seeing that you cannot always manage and you don't necessarily do everything perfectly, but in letting them see you, you affirm to them that you see them. And there's a deep and intimate bond between a single parent and their children because of this. Your children have really seen you, and in really seeing you, you've given them a gift that will carry them through their life, and that is the gift that you see them too.
Sure. I mean, so I speak as someone who, I grew up in a single parent home. My mom raised 3 of us on our own, and often with under-resourced. We lived in small granny flats. We struggled to make ends meet. Like, I could not imagine doing this as a single parent. And so I want to just say to all of you out there, massive big up, grace to you. And then I want to say to those of us in the church who know of single parents, let's do all that we can to get around them. This nuclear family, just us against the world thing, is a very, very modern thing. Actually, the biblical family is community, it's getting around people. And so I just want to say, let's open our eyes and let's do what we can. As Sam alluded, there's one little thing I'd say as a practical example. We've got some app, I forget the name of it, maybe we can post the link later on, but it's an app that allows Lauren's mom to read stories to our children when we're needing to work. And so as much as possible, those little breaks, reach out to others, and let's push in as a church community to help those at the moment who need our help. They really do. And I want to call us to, let's rally around single parents in this moment, because we're a bigger family than just our nuclear family in what Jesus set up. That's fundamentally
brilliant.
what we are.
One of the things I learned from a fantastic pastor that taught me a lot, you know, sometimes we want to ask someone like, do you need help? Like single parents, the answer is yes, they need help. So just help. Like maybe just ask and say, would you like me to do this or this? But I'm doing one of them. Or so, you know, I think also in some ways, just get front-footed and don't push ourselves into space unhealthily. But I think just get in there, get stuck in, make it happen. Guys, I'm going to need to call it an end. I'm terrible at time management. It's way late. I know you've all had crazy days. We've still got a bunch of people watching, which is fantastic. And really, Laura, I wanted to thank you so much. I've known you for many years, and just fantastic to see the woman that you're becoming and how much help you're able to bring and offer. So really treasure you. Thank you so much. And Sam, just getting to know you, but I loved your shout out to Wade. You guys are fantastic, and you've really helped us. And the link to your video is in the description. I really encourage you guys to check that out. And then, of course, Luke, my brother, thanks for joining us, mate. Good to have you.
Thanks so much, Donnie. This is such a great initiative, mate. Well done.
Brilliant, man. And to all of you out there, don't forget to check out the resources in the description. We'll probably need to edit this a little bit, but we will make it available in some way or form to be shared at a later stage. But God bless you all, and trusting it goes well with you. We're going to sign out. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.